The research station floated in the darkness of space like a tiny metal island. Inside, hundreds of aliens worked day and night on a problem that had no answer. They had been working for 47 cycles, which was almost 50 Earth years, and they were no closer to solving the mystery than when they started. Director Yuna walked through the long white hallways of the station. She was tall and thin, with blue-gray skin and 4 large eyes that could see in many directions at once. Her species, the Varani, were known throughout the galaxy as great thinkers and scholars. Yuna herself had solved language puzzles that had confused others for centuries. But this puzzle was different. This puzzle was beating her. She entered the main research chamber and looked up at the giant holographic display that filled the room. Thousands of symbols floated in the air, glowing soft blue against the darkness. These symbols had been found on a dead planet called Varith-9, carved into stone walls and metal plates by a civilization that had disappeared long ago. The carvings were old. Very old. Scientists said they were more than 10,000 years old, and nobody could read them. Yuna's assistant, a small creature named Pale, hurried over to her. Pale belonged to a species called the Refians. He was short, with smooth white skin and large dark eyes. He carried a datapad in his thin fingers. Director, Pale said, the latest analysis is complete. I'm sorry to say we found nothing new. Yuna made a clicking sound with her mouth. This was how her species showed frustration. Show me the results. Pale touched his datapad, and new information appeared on the holographic display. Charts, graphs, comparison tables. All of them showed the same thing. The symbols from Varith-9 matched. Nothing in the Coalition's database. The Galactic Coalition was the government that united all the known species of the galaxy. 300 different kinds of aliens lived and worked together under its banner. They had mapped 17 galaxies, discovered faster-than-light travel, and built space stations bigger than planets. The Coalition's language database contained more than 4,000 different languages from across the stars, but not one of those languages matched the Varith symbols. We compared them to every known writing system, Pale explained. We looked for mathematical patterns. We searched for pictures hidden in the symbols. Nothing works. The language is completely alone? Yuna stared at the floating symbols. 312 unique characters. They had to mean something. Someone had carved them into stone with great care, wanting them to last forever. Someone had wanted these words to be read, but by whom? What do we know about the planet? Yuna asked. Pale checked his datapad. Varith-9 was once a living world with oceans and forests. The civilization there built great cities and covered the planet with their culture. Then, approximately 10,000 years ago, they disappeared. We do not know why. There are no bodies, no weapons, no signs of war or disease. They simply stopped existing and left only their words behind. Yuna said quietly. She walked closer to the display, looking at the symbols one by one. Some were simple, just a few lines. Others were complex, with curves and dots and marks that seemed almost decorative. There was a pattern here. There had to be. All languages had patterns, but she could not see it. Director, Pale said carefully, there is one option we have not tried. Yuna turned to look at him. She already knew what he was going to say. The humans, Pale continued. They have specialists in ancient languages. Perhaps they could offer a new perspective. Yuna's 4 eyes blinked slowly. The humans. She had almost forgotten about them. They had joined the Coalition only 8 cycles ago, which was less than a decade. In galactic terms, they were babies. Their civilization was young, their technology was basic, and their understanding of the universe was still growing. Most Coalition species looked down on humans. They were soft creatures with weak bodies and short lives. They could not see in the dark, could not hear high sounds, and could not survive in extreme temperatures. Evolution had not been kind to them. What could humans possibly offer? Yuna asked. Their entire history is less than 10,000 years old. They were living in caves when these symbols were carved. That is true, Pale admitted. but we have tried everything else. And humans have a strange talent for languages. Their homeworld has over 6,000 different languages, more than any other known planet. Yuna considered this. 6,000 languages on one small world. That was unusual. Most planets developed one or two global languages over time. But humans had kept thousands alive, preserving ancient words and forgotten tongues with strange dedication. Perhaps there was value in that. Very well, Yuna said finally. Contact Earth? Ask them to send their best language specialist? But I do not expect much. Pale bowed his head and hurried away to send the message. Yuna stayed in the research chamber, alone with the glowing symbols. She had spent her entire career solving the unsolvable. She had translated languages from species that had died before her great-grandparents were born. She had found meaning in marks that others dismissed as random scratches, but these symbols defeated her. She reached out and touched one of the holographic characters. It passed through her fingers like smoke, cold and empty. Somewhere 10,000 years ago, someone had carved this symbol into stone. They had chosen each line and curve with purpose. They had believed their words would last forever, and now those words were silent, waiting, hoping that someone, someday, would give them voice again. Yuna lowered her hand and turned away from the display. The human would arrive in a few days. She doubted the primitive creature would find anything useful, but at this point, she had nothing left to lose. The small transport ship docked at Vareth Station 3 days later. Yuna watched from the observation window as the docking clamps locked into place. She felt nothing. No excitement, no hope. She had stopped hoping weeks ago. Pale stood beside her, checking his datapad. The human's name is Dahi. She is a lieutenant in the Earth Diplomatic Corps, before joining the military. She studied ancient languages at a place called Seoul National University. Ancient human languages, Yuna corrected. Languages that are only a few thousand years old at most. How can that help us with symbols twice as old? Pale did not answer. He had learned long ago that the director did not want answers to such questions. She was simply thinking out loud. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. A single figure stepped through, though he was smaller than Yuna expected. Humans were already short compared to Varani, but this one seemed especially small. She had black hair pulled back from her face and dark eyes that moved quickly, taking in everything around her. She wore a simple gray uniform with Earth symbol on the shoulder. She walked toward them with steady steps, not showing any fear or nervousness. Most new species found the coalition overwhelming at first. The strange aliens, the massive stations, the advanced technology. But this human looked calm. Almost curious, Director Yuna? Dahi said. Her voice was quiet but clear. Thank you for inviting me. I hope I can help. Yuna studied the human carefully. Soft skin that could be cut by a child's toy. Eyes that could only see in a narrow range of light. A body that would die in minutes if exposed to the vacuum of space. How had such a weak creature survived long enough to develop intelligence? We appreciate you coming, Lieutenant, Yuna said. Her translator device turned her clicks and whistles into human words. Though I must be honest, I do not expect much. This problem has defeated the greatest minds in the coalition. Dahi smiled. It was a strange expression, the corners of her mouth turning upward. Yuna had learned that humans did this to show friendliness, but it still unsettled her. Too many teeth visible. I understand, Dahi said. Sometimes fresh eyes can see what tired eyes cannot. But I make no promises. Yuna appreciated the honesty. At least this human did not have an overblown opinion of herself. They walked together through the station. Pale followed behind, occasionally pointing out important facilities. Dahi asked intelligent questions about the station's systems and the research being conducted. She listened carefully to the answers and did not pretend to understand things she did not. How long have you been studying these symbols? Dahi asked. 47 cycles, Yuna replied. In your time measurement, approximately 48 years. Dahi nodded slowly. That is a long time. Your people must be very patient. We are very stubborn, Yuna corrected. The Varani do not give up easily. It is both our strength and our weakness. They passed through a large open area where dozens of aliens worked at floating terminals. Dahi's eyes moved across the room, studying each species she saw. Some had scales, some had feathers, some had no visible features at all. The coalition was a gathering of life forms that had nothing in common except intelligence and curiosity. Your homeworld, Yuna said. Earth, it has many languages, yes? Over 6,000, Dahi confirmed, though many are dying now. Young people do not learn the old tongues. Why do you preserve them? Languages are tools. When a tool becomes useless, why keep it? Dahi was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was thoughtful. Languages are more than tools. They are memories. Each language contains a way of seeing the world that is unique. When a language dies, that way of seeing dies with it. We lose something that can never be recovered. Yuna considered this. It was a strange way of thinking. Practical minds would say that communication was the only purpose of language. But humans seemed to believe that words carried meaning beyond their simple definitions. Perhaps that was why they had so many languages. They could not bear to let any of them go. They reached the primary display chamber. Yuna touched a panel on the wall, and the room came alive with holographic light. The Varith symbols filled the air, thousands of ancient characters floating in the darkness. Dahi stopped walking. Her body became very still. Yuna watched her carefully. This was the moment when most analysts showed confusion. Their eyes would move randomly across the symbols, finding no pattern, no meaning. Their shoulders would slump as they realized the task was impossible, but Dahi did not look confused. She looked shocked. The human stepped forward slowly, as if moving through water. Her eyes were wide. Her mouth had fallen slightly open. Her hands trembled at her sides. Lieutenant? Yuna said, What do you see? Dahi did not answer immediately. She walked closer to the display, her eyes fixed on a particular group of symbols. Her breathing had become quick and shallow. This is impossible, she whispered. Yuna felt something stir in her chest. Hope, faint and weak, but present. In 47 cycles, no one had ever reacted this way. Every other analyst had shown nothing but confusion. But this human saw something. What is impossible? Yuna pressed. What do you recognize? Dahi turned to face her. The human's dark eyes were filled with an emotion that Yuna could not identify. Fear? Wonder? Disbelief? Director, Dahi said quietly, I need to sit down. And then I need to tell you something that will change everything you think you know about my species. Pale brought a chair. The human sat heavily, still staring at the glowing symbols. Her hands were shaking badly now. She clasped them together in her lap to hold them still. Yuna stood before her, waiting. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the holographic projectors. Whatever the human had seen, it had shaken her deeply. And that meant it was important. Yuna leaned forward. Her 4 eyes focused intently on the small, fragile creature before her. Tell me, she said. Tell me everything. Dahi sat in the chair with her hands pressed together. She stared at the glowing symbols floating in the air around her. Her mind was racing, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. It could not be true. It was impossible. And yet her eyes told her it was real. Lieutenant, Director Yuna said impatiently. Explain yourself. What do you see? Dahi took a deep breath. She had to say it out loud. She had to hear the words leave her own mouth, even though they sounded crazy. I see Korean, she said. The room went completely silent. Pale stopped typing on his datapad. Yuna's 4 eyes blinked slowly, all at the same time. Korean? Yuna repeated. What is Korean? It is a language from my homeworld, Dahi explained. Her voice was steadier now. From a place called the Korean Peninsula. The writing system you see here is called Hangul. It was created about 600 years ago by a king named Sejong. Pale stepped forward, his expression troubled. That is not possible, Lieutenant. These inscriptions are over 10,000 years old. Your people were not writing anything 600 years ago. They were barely surviving. I know, Dahi said. I know how impossible it sounds, but I am telling you what I see. She stood up and walked toward the display. Her legs still felt weak, but she forced them to move. She pointed at a cluster of symbols near the center of the projection. This symbol here, she said, is the consonant H in Hangul. We call it Hute. And this one beside it is the vowel A. We call it a, when you put them together, they make the sound Ha. Yuna moved closer, her eyes studying the symbols Dahi was pointing at. You are certain of this? I grew up writing these letters, Dahi said. I learned them before I could walk. This is my language, Director. I'm as certain as I can be about anything. She moved to another section of the display. Here, this is a complete word. The symbols form the word Hanyul. It means sky in Korean. Pale was typing rapidly on his datapad, recording everything Dahi said. Yuna stood frozen, her mind struggling to accept what she was hearing. How far is this planet from Earth? Dahi asked suddenly. Yuna consulted her own datapad. Approximately 17,000 light-years. Dahi laughed. It was not a happy laugh. It was the sound of someone whose entire understanding of reality had just been destroyed. 17,000 light-years away? 10,000 years old. And it is written in my language. What does this mean? Yuna asked. How is this possible? Dahi shook her head slowly. I do not know. But there is only one explanation that makes any sense. Somehow, some group of humans reached the stars long before we thought we invented writing. Long before we thought we built our first cities. They traveled to this planet, built a civilization, and left these messages behind. The idea was staggering. The Coalition had always viewed humans as newcomers to space. Their first spacecraft had left their atmosphere less than 300 years ago. Their first faster-than-light ship had been built less than 2 centuries ago. They were considered one of the youngest spacefaring species in the known galaxy, but if Dahi was right, humans were not young at all. They were ancient. We need to translate everything, Yuna said. Her voice had changed. The doubt was gone, replaced by urgent excitement. Can you read all of it? Dahi studied the symbols more carefully. Most of it, yes. But some of it is different. The basic structure is Hangul, but there are elements I do not recognize. The language has evolved. It has changed over thousands of years, mixing with other things I cannot identify. But you can understand the foundation, Pale said. Yes, the foundation is there. It is like reading an old book that has been partly translated into another language. Difficult, but not impossible. Yuna turned to Pale. Contact the Coalition Science Council immediately. Tell them we have made a breakthrough. Tell them we need more resources, more staff, more equipment. This is now the highest priority research project in the galaxy. Pale hurried away to send the message. Yuna turned back to Dahi. The director's eyes were bright with an emotion that Dahi had not seen before. It took her a moment to recognize it. Joy. 47 cycles, Yuna said quietly. 47 cycles we have stared at these symbols, seeing nothing. And you walk in and read them like a children's book. Not quite that easy, Dahi said. This will take time. Months, maybe years. The language has changed so much. But you have given us a beginning. You have given us hope. Yuna reached out and placed one of her long fingers on Dahi's shoulder. Your people, Lieutenant. They are not what we thought they were. Dahi looked back at the floating symbols. Somewhere out there in the darkness of space, her ancestors had lived and died. They had built cities and raised children. They had looked up at strange stars and wondered about the universe, just as she did now, Da, and then they had disappeared, leaving only these words behind. What had happened to them? Why had they vanished? And why had the humans on Earth forgotten everything? These questions burned in Dahi's mind. She knew that finding the answers would change everything. Not just for the Coalition, but for humanity itself. She rolled up her sleeves and turned to face the holographic display. Let us begin, she said. We have 10,000 years of history to uncover. The days blurred together into weeks. Dahi worked without rest, stopping only when her body forced her to sleep. She ate her meals at her workstation, her eyes never leaving the holographic symbols that surrounded her like a cocoon of light. Director Yuna watched the human with growing respect. She had expected the fragile creature to tire quickly, to give up when the work became difficult. But Dahi showed a determination that matched any Varani, perhaps even exceeded it. The translation was slow and painful. The Hangul foundation was clear, but the language had changed over thousands of years in ways that Dahi had never seen. New symbols had been added. Old rules had been modified. Some words had meanings that no longer existed in modern Korean Da, but piece by piece, the story emerged. They called themselves the First Children, Dahi announced one morning. Her voice was hoarse from lack of sleep. That is what they named their civilization. The First Children of Earth. Yuna leaned forward in her chair. Tell me more. Dahi gestured at a section of the display. According to these records, they left Earth approximately 12,000 years ago. They had developed faster-than-light travel using a method that I do not fully understand. The technical terms are too complex for me to translate. But they reached the stars, Pale said. He had been helping Dahi with the research, bringing her data and running comparison analyses, before any other humans knew how to write. Yes, Dahi rubbed her tired eyes. They spread across this region of the galaxy. They colonized dozens of worlds. They built an empire that lasted for over 2,000 years. The implications were enormous. While humans on Earth were still hunting animals with stone spears, another branch of humanity had been building starships and colonizing planets. They had walked on alien worlds, breathed alien air, looked up at alien suns, and the humans on Earth had known nothing about it. What happened to them? Yuna asked. Why did they disappear? Dahi was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was sad. I am still translating the later records. But it seems they made mistakes. Terrible mistakes. She moved to a different section of the display. The symbols here were carved more roughly, as if the person writing them had been in a hurry. Or afraid? They expanded too quickly, Dahi explained. They took more than they gave. They consumed resources from dozens of worlds without thought for the future. They believed they were special, chosen, that the universe existed for them to use as they pleased. Yuna's mandibles clicked softly. She had seen this pattern before. Many species had fallen into the same trap. Power made them arrogant. Arrogance made them careless. And carelessness led to destruction. There was a war, Dahi continued. Not with another species. With themselves. Different factions of the First Children fought over resources, over territory, over beliefs. The war lasted for centuries. It destroyed everything they had built. Pale shook his head sadly. They defeated themselves, yes. Dahi touched one of the holographic symbols gently. By the end, only a few thousand remained. They scattered across different worlds, trying to survive. But they had lost their technology, their knowledge, their hope. Within a few generations, they were gone. The room fell silent. Yuna thought about the dead cities on Vareth 9, the empty streets, the collapsed buildings, the stone tablets carved with desperate words. A civilization that had touched the stars had crumbled into dust. But these messages, Yuna said, they left them for a reason. Dahi nodded. The last survivors knew they were dying. They knew their children would not remember them. So they carved these words into stone, hoping that someday someone would find them. Someone who could read their language. Someone from Earth, Pale said quietly. Yes, Dahi's eyes were wet with tears, but she did not wipe them away. They were writing to us, to the humans who stayed behind. They were trying to warn us. She moved to the final section of the display. The symbols were the clearest, carved with great care and precision. This was the most important message. The one the First Children had wanted to last forever. Dahi read the ancient words slowly, her voice trembling. To those who come after us, we reached too far, too fast. We forgot where we came from. We believed we were masters of the universe, but we were only guests. Do not repeat our arrogance. Remember the earth beneath your feet and the sky above your head. Remember that you are small, and the universe is vast, and humility is the only wisdom that endures. Silence filled the chamber. Yuna felt a strange tightness in her chest. She had lived for over 200 cycles. She had seen civilizations rise and fall, but she had never heard words so full of pain and hope and regret. They wanted us to do better, Dahi whispered. They died so that we could learn from their mistakes. Yuna stood and walked to the human. She placed her hand on Dahi's shoulder once again. Then we must make sure their sacrifice was not in vain, Yuna said. We must share this story with the galaxy. We must make sure everyone hears their warning. Dahi wiped her eyes and nodded. There is more to translate. Months of work remaining, but the core message is clear. She looked at the ancient symbols floating in the air around her. Her ancestors, her family, separated by 10,000 years and 17,000 light years, but connected by words that had survived everything. I will not let you be forgotten, she promised them silently. I will make sure everyone knows who you were. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Within days, every species in the coalition knew the story. Humanity was not young. Humanity was ancient. They had reached the stars before almost anyone else, built an empire, and then destroyed themselves through arrogance and war. And then they had done something impossible. They had risen again. Director Yuna stood before the Coalition Council, the highest governing body in the known galaxy. Hundreds of representatives from hundreds of species filled the massive chamber, their eyes and senses and other organs all focused on her. The evidence is clear, Yuna said. Her voice carried through the hall, translated into thousands of languages simultaneously. The Varith inscriptions were written by humans approximately 10,000 years ago. Lieutenant Dahi has translated over 80% of the records. There can be no doubt. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some species looked at the human delegation with new eyes. Others whispered among themselves. Their expressions troubled. One of the senior council members, a massive crystalline being named Vorith, spoke up. This changes our understanding of human development. But what does it mean for the coalition? Yuna had expected this question. It means that we have underestimated humanity. We have treated them as children, as newcomers who need our guidance. But they are not children. They are survivors. They fell from the greatest heights, forgot everything, and then climbed back to the stars using nothing but their own determination. She paused, letting her words sink in. In my species' entire history, we have never seen anything like this. No other civilization has ever recovered from such complete collapse. Humanity did not just survive. They rebuilt themselves from nothing. Twice they reached for the stars. And twice they succeeded. The chamber fell silent. Yuna looked at the human delegation sitting in their designated area. Dahi was there, wearing a formal uniform, her face calm but her eyes bright. Beside her sat other human representatives, diplomats and scientists who had come to witness this historic moment. The first children left a warning, Yuna continued. They told us that arrogance destroys. That power without humility leads to ruin. They paid for this wisdom with their lives. We must honor their sacrifice by listening to their words. Another council member, a tall insectoid named Crix, raised one of her many limbs. You suggest that we treat humans as equals, but they are still technologically behind us. Their bodies are fragile. Their lifespans are short. And yet they are here, Yuna replied. They crossed the void between stars. They joined our coalition. And when we could not read the words of their own ancestors, Lieutenant Dahi translated them in weeks. She looked directly at Crix. Judge a species not by the strength of their bodies, but by the strength of their spirit. By that measure, humans may be the strongest species in this galaxy. The debate continued for hours. Some council members argued that nothing had really changed. Humans were still humans, regardless of their ancient history. Others believe that this discovery demanded a complete reassessment of humanity's role in the coalition. In the end, the Council voted to elevate humanity's status. They would no longer be treated as a junior member species. They would be given full voice in all coalition matters, equal to species that had been spacefaring for millions of years. After the session ended, Yuna found Dahi standing alone on an observation deck. The human was looking out at the stars, her reflection faint in the transparent wall. "Congratulations, Lieutenant," Yuna said. "Your people have achieved something remarkable today." Dahi turned to look at her. "We achieved nothing. We simply learned who we really are." Yuna stood beside her, looking out at the same stars. "How do you feel, knowing what your ancestors accomplished and what they lost?" Dahi was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was thoughtful. "I feel proud," she said, "and sad, and determined." She turned to face Yuna directly. "My ancestors reached too high and fell. They forgot their humility and paid the ultimate price. But they left us a gift. They left us their story, their warning, their hope. And what will you do with that gift?" "We will learn from it." Dahi's eyes were steady. "We will remember that we are not the center of the universe. We will remember that power means nothing without wisdom. And we will try to build something better than what they built. Something that lasts." Yuna studied the small human carefully. This creature, with her soft skin and short lifespan and fragile body, carried within her the memory of 10,000 years. She was connected to ancestors who had walked on alien worlds before her species had invented the wheel. And somehow, despite everything, she was standing here, among the stars, ready to try again. "Your species confuses me," Yuna admitted. "You are weak in so many ways. You break easily. You die quickly. And yet you never stop trying. You never give up. Even when you forget everything, you start over and climb back up." Dahi smiled. "That is what humans do, Director. We fall, we break. We forget, but we always get back up. It is the only thing we know how to do." Yuna made her clicking sound, but this time it was not frustration. It was something closer to admiration. "Then I am glad you are part of the coalition, Lieutenant Dahi. I suspect we have much to learn from each other." Dahi looked back at the stars. Somewhere out there, on dozens of dead worlds, the ruins of the first children still stood, silent monuments to a civilization that had touched the heavens and fallen. Their words had waited 10,000 years to be heard. Now, finally, someone had listened. "We will not waste this chance," Dahi said quietly, making a promise to her ancestors, to the coalition, and to herself. "This time we will get it right." The stars continued to shine, ancient and patient, waiting to see if humanity would keep its promise.